Hey, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to another installment of the NTC podcast. This is episode 109, sponsored by Sports Business Classroom. So I'm Aaron Washington, your host. Glad to have you guys back on the episode here. Avi Tiagi joins me on my right. Glad to have my co-host back in the house as we dive into some playoff-type basketball. Today was a huge day in the NBA. We had all 30 teams playing. It was the final day of the regular season. We had a lot of blowouts. There were a lot of games that were not competitive. I'm looking at you, Thunder, Maverick. 50 points. That's rough. But other games in the NBA were a little more interesting, and they went right down to the wire. And in general, in this episode, what Avi and I are going to try to accomplish with you guys is to really break down the 4 play-in games that will be occurring on a couple days here on our end for the play-in tournament. So we have 8 teams that are participating. There's a few spots up for grabs, but half of the teams that we're going to be talking about today will not make the playoffs. So just thinking about that before we even get started is crazy. The Warriors might not make the playoffs. The Kings might not make it. The Lakers might not make it. I mean, there's a lot of crazy scenarios here. But Avi and I are going to jump into those here in just a minute. So Avi, it's been a crazy day. We've seen a lot of interesting results and playoff matchups get solidified. I'm really excited for the playoffs to formally begin. But before we get there, and we will cover that in another pod, really excited to get into the play-in because we're going to see a few teams bow out before the playoffs even start. So it should be a good one for sure.
Man, as interesting as today's games were, they weren't altogether all that close in most of them. I'm still basking in the afterglow of that incredible Spurs win the other day against the Nuggets, that 23-point comeback, 17 points in 3 minutes by Wemby. The utter chaos of that and the way that it shook up the standings and kind of changed the incentive structure for how teams were going to approach today. I mean, that game to me is legendary. I'm still thinking about that game even as I was taking notes for this. I just couldn't help it. So, I mean, I'm really excited for the play-in, especially now that some of the seedings have changed and some of the matchups are different than what they might have been originally. So, excited to get into that today.
That was quite the finishing touch for Wemby's rookie season. He just put the cherry
Beautiful.
on top and said, I'll leave you guys with that, and I'll see y'all next season. So that is just mind-boggling. What a year
They
for him.
finished 7-4. 7-4.
7-4.
They
Man,
gave
this is
Sandro
so
those
impressive.
minutes, man.
Yep, for sure, man. And I wonder if we're going to see him in the Olympics this summer. That's going to be an interesting
I think so.
development to kind of keep an eye on.
I think we will, at least based off of what he was saying, but you never know.
For sure. But we'll see. We'll get there here in just another couple of months. For today, we are going to dive into the East playing games and then the West playing games. So we're going to start off here with the East 9-10 matchup that will be occurring here very shortly. So this is going to be Bulls-Hawks, everybody. Chicago Bulls, Atlanta Hawks. So this is the 9-10 matchup. The Bulls finished with 39 wins on the season. The Hawks finished with 36 wins, 10 games under 500. Both of these teams are coming in. They've had pretty tumultuous seasons both ways. They both had a multitude of injuries. Both teams had some significant lows in their season. The Bulls in particular had a really rough start before they righted the ship. And the Hawks are coming off of a long stretch with no Trae Young. They had a re-injury to Jalen Johnson. They lost Sadiq Bey to an ACL tear. Okongwu is out for the season. They've been really battered up. And then, of course, with the Bulls, we know what their situation. With no Patrick Williams, Lonzo Ball is out. Zach LaVine lost him way back in the middle of the season. So for both teams, coming a little bit banged up, they've gone through some real tough battles this season. And I think by all accounts, both of them have underperformed relative to what they expected to do this season, especially the Hawks. I think a lot of people would have had them probably somewhere in the 4 to 6 range or 7, somewhere in there, and they couldn't get a real serious run together. So they find themselves here needing 2 wins just to get into the playoffs. And starting with the Bulls, I want to highlight them here for a second. They finished the season basically in the bottom third in both offense and defense, 19th offense, 21st defense. Today was a pretty incredible game against the Knicks. They were right there the entire time. They went back and forth. I watched the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter and then the overtime period between those two teams. They lost by 1, 120 to 119. Kobe White, another highlight on his incredible, what should be a most improved season for him. He's going to finish the season with 19 points per game, 4 boards, 5 assists. And there were multiple points of the season. This is kind of rehashing what we talked about, Avi, in our most improved pod. But there were multiple times, not just today, but throughout the season, to where they gave Kobe the keys down the stretch of the game. They really
Yeah.
trusted him to create his own shot. He's improved his dribble by a massive margin. His finishing is improved. His off the dribble shooting is improved. Just became a focal point for the Bulls offense and somebody they could really rely on throughout the game and then down the stretch to get a quality basket. So he's going to be somebody that the Hawks are going to need to key in on, as well as DeMar DeRozan. Between those two guys, pretty legitimate threats if the game gets close, which I feel like it will be. I feel like that game will go down to the stretch, and then with those two guys kind of trading on-ball reps down the stretch, I think that's going to be something to really keep an eye on. But I think aside from those guys in the backcourt, if we're talking about another backcourt player that's going to be a huge factor in this 9-10 game, Alex Caruso can make or
Yeah.
break this game for the Bulls. Watched him today, D-up Jalen Brunson. He got cooked because Jalen Brunson's been cooking the entire NBA all season long. I put him on my All-NBA second team ballot here not too long ago. He's been flaming everybody, but Caruso did not back down. Caruso took the challenge. He played him tough. He had a few key steals, forced Brunson into some turnovers there today down the stretch to give the Bulls a great chance to win the game. His heart, his tenacity, his attention to detail on defense, just his overall defensive impact. Going up against Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, I mean, that's going to be massive. And if we're going to try to quantify Caruso's impact on defense, all you need to do is go to the advanced stats as far as the defense goes, and you will see that bear on in the numbers. So for dunks and threes, I went to their defensive estimated plus minus. He is fifth in the entire NBA at plus 3.4. So if we're talking about one player that you would pick to throw on Trae Young or somebody of that caliber, Caruso is probably one of the first picks in the entire NBA. So for that reason alone, paired with the fact that Trae is just coming back from a multiple week absence, I really like the Bulls' chances of grabbing this win. You add on to that the fact that they're going to be the home team in this matchup, and a lot of things I think are in their favor, even with the multitude of injuries that they have. So between the clutch play of Kobe, DeMar, the on-ball defense of Caruso, the steady low post play of Vucevic, the porous defense of the Hawks, and we'll get to them in a minute, I really think the Bulls have the ingredients to really give the Hawks run for their money and possibly even grab this win and then go into the loser of the 7-8 and see if they can get into that last playoff spot. So, Avi, I want to get your thoughts on this and see what you think as far as who will win this game and what you think would give the Bulls a chance here on their side of things looking at this matchup.
Well, I have to say two things to start this off. It was absolutely nasty that Tibbs chose to play Dante DiVincenzo 50 minutes today and played Brunson more than 40
That's
minutes
good
after
for
how
you, man.
exhausted they were. And it's actually a testament to the Bulls that they were actually able to do such a good job despite playing against the Knicks starters for so long and really take it to overtime and only lose by one. I think it is a credit to them. But man, Tibbs, that was nasty. I just had to get that off my chest because
That's the worst.
I can't believe game 82, that's what he chose to do. Like, come
He is
on, man. Are you
madman.
serious?
Madman.
He is crazy, man. Have you learned
Yeah.
nothing from 2011 and 2012? Come on, man.
Dude,
Ugh,
he's stuck in his ways. Like, he will not
ugh.
change ever.
It just makes me so mad. Anyways, did you know Impredictable has the Jerry West Clutch Player of the Year tracking system, like the way they determine who the most clutch players are based off of a combination of factors?
Hmm.
DeMar DeRozan and Alex Caruso are both top 5.
Okay.
Yeah,
There we go. I mean, you got the eye test, you got the numbers, the
yep.
statistics. I mean, it all kind of backs up that fact. It's perfect.
They are in the esteemed. Let me just read the top 10 for you, actually. Giannis, Shea, DeMar, Jokic, Caruso, Steph, Doncic, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Chet Holmgren. Oh, and then 11 through 15 is Halliburton, Irving, Lillard, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey. So
Mm.
not a shabby list.
Not at all. Not at all. Impressive names.
Yeah. But anyways, when I think about the Bulls, I just think about the fact that as injured as they are currently, they are somehow fortunate in a way. I'll break it down. They are injured, but every player who's injured had a more than capable replacement who kind of just stepped up and is performing at almost a similar level.
Mm.
Lonzo Ball's been hurt for a couple years. They kind of knew, hey, we might not get him back this year. There was some hope early on, but it is with Lonzo. I hope he comes back next year and looks more like himself. But you have Alex Caruso. If you wanted someone to make some shots, Alex Caruso add a little bit more to his plate in terms of being an offensive scorer and like playmaker for others. This is his best season in my opinion in that regard. So you're kind of
Mhm.
getting some of Lonzo's production from him. Levine went down, but I thought Levine's defense was horrible. Kobe White's not a great defender either. Let's not get that twisted. I think he's a pretty poor defender, but Levine was horrendous. And Kobe White stepped in and was able to kind of take charge of that offense and be that perimeter 3-point shooting scorer. So
Mhm.
they kind of made up for that. Patrick Williams went down, but they just found Javante Green out of nowhere again. He was just kind of wandering around in the G League for most of the year. They picked him up
Mhm.
again, and he's been fantastic. I've actually liked what he's
Great.
provided more than Patrick Williams in some ways. I think he's been more aggressive offensively since he's come back. I think he kind of is trying to make a name for himself as a driver and trying to keep his place within the league. So, but I love the minutes I've seen from him.
Yep.
Desunmu and Drummond might be questionable for the playing games, but I mean it's fine because now you just have Javon Carter playing well again, and Adama
Mhm.
Sonogo just decided to drop a 2020 all of a sudden. So
Out of
they
nowhere.
kind of have replacements everywhere. Billy Donovan, by the way, should get a statue for that win against the Wizards. The lineups he was putting out there were ridiculous. I was watching some of that game just to laugh. I was like, man, I don't. Other than summer league, no, not even summer league, because not all of these players were young. You might never see a matchup like this. Like this is
True.
a play-in team, and the players they're putting out there. I mean, did you know Henry Drell was in the league? I don't
Nope.
even know if I'm pronouncing his name right. I'm
I already
sorry.
know who that is.
Yep, exactly. It was again. Billy Donovan deserves a statue for that. I mean, my goodness. But yeah, I think the Bulls are injured, but they're injured in ways where they can compensate for it, and they still have DeMar DeRozan. Kind of, he's still DeMar DeRozan. He started the
Doing his
year
thing.
kind of slow, but he's picked it up since then, and the mid-range shooting is what it is. He brings you that scoring ability in the clutch, but just in general as well. He's not turnover prone either, so you're never gonna have to worry about that being an issue when you hand him the ball. He's safe and he's dependable.
Yep.
And
That's
when you're
exactly
playing the injured Hawks, I think that's all you really need. Just give me safe and dependable. They don't have any
right.
killer lineups. Again, Vucevic defensively, I still have some qualms with him, but most of their starting lineups, just as a whole, they're just kind of like net neutral. And when you're playing the Hawks, who are so injured that Vic Krejci was playing more than 30 minutes the other day as a
Yeah.
starter,
Mm.
I mean,
Not a great sign.
I didn't believe in the Hawks that much going into the season, anyways, and that was back when they had Sadiq Bey and Jalen Johnson. Now you're telling me their hopes rest with Vic Krejci.
No, I'm not confident in that at all.
Okongwu's hurt too, so
Yep.
Bruno Fernando. I mean, it's just, I mean, what are we looking at here? I mean,
Yeah.
the Murray and Trey Young fit hasn't worked that well, but now it's just, it really is Bogdan Bogdanovic make some threes, and I guess we'll just pray. It's,
Just
uh,
pray for the
mm,
best. That's that.
yeah,
That's essentially what it comes
it's
down
ugly,
to.
man. It's
I got some
ugly.
numbers here.
Oh,
Because
please.
if we're shifting to the Hawks' perspective now, looking at their side of the story, I mean, their major Achilles heel all season long has been the defense. 27th in
Shocker.
defense was their season rating, their final number here. They gave up 157 to the Pacers today.
Uh-huh.
But guess what, Avi? That was the second time they gave up
Yeah, that's
157 to
right.
the same team.
Oh
Not
my
only
god.
that, that was the third time they gave up 150 or more points to the same team in the same season. Isn't that crazy? Can you believe that?
You know what? It's the Hawks, so I can believe it. If it was any normal team, I couldn't, but it's the Hawks. I can believe it.
Just, I know they're a terrible defensive team, but it's just baffling to me that anybody can do this against the same team. So November 21st, we go back to one of the first few weeks, 157. January 5th,
Oh my god.
150. So
Make
three
it stop.
times in one season. I mean, like, golly, I mean, I guess it's a good thing they're not playing the Pacers in the play-in because I mean they'd probably lose by 50. I mean, it's just that's just brutal. Uh, so we already talked about the injuries. So Sadiq Bey, Kongwu, Jalen Johnson. The Jalen Johnson one is absolutely brutal
Oh
because of
yeah.
what he did as a connector in the front court,
Yes.
as a lob threat, as a low key ball handler, being able to
Yeah.
get to his spots around the court, get to the rim, make plays for others. A very underrated passer. So
Yes.
somebody that can play in the high post, be a hub, hit the cutter, hit a skip pass for three. I mean, nothing crazy. I mean, he's not Jokic or anything, but I mean, he's a really solid passer. So losing that in the front court is huge. You have Trae Young just getting back into the rhythm. Uh, he he missed every game between February 25th and April 10th, and he's only played 2 games since coming back, and he didn't even crack 30 minutes in either game. 21 and
Yeah.
27
Mm.
minutes in the 2 games he has played. So, of course, for the season, his numbers are awesome. 26 points a game, 10 assists, 37% from three on 8 attempts per game. But the problem is we just don't know where his conditioning is at right now. He's probably not in a great rhythm right now. So if you're coming back, your third game back, you're dealing with Alex Caruso of all people hounding you over screens because you're not going to lose him. Like there's some players who are like, hey, you call for a screen and there's a switch almost instantly, or that player is just going to get lost in the backcourt and you have a 2-on-1. You
Yeah.
watch Caruso, he's relentless. He's not going to leave the play. So for
And he's
Trey,
very savvy. In terms of
yeah,
scouting his opponent when he has a primary matchup, I think Caruso, maybe more than any defender, I actually think, probably does the best job of taking away their go-to moves. Like he is
mhm,
excellent at studying the main moves of every primary threat he faces. I remember at least a couple times when he faced Tatum. Tatum especially loves the through the leg step back and stuff, especially going to his left. And Caruso is just excellent. No, I'm just not going to let you do that, man. Like I know
mhm,
what you want to do. So I at least anecdotally have seen him a couple times against star players. He did a great job of this during the Lakers' a championship run as well. Against Lillard, I think he's excellent at taking away kind of the best shots opponents have and reading the scouting report. And
mhm,
again, did what did we just talk about the Hawks being terrible at? Defense, right?
mhm.
Is DeAndre Hunter, Bruno Fernando, Trae Young, Vic Krejci, is that supposed to stop anyone?
Do you
I
mention
don't think
DeAndre
so.
Hunter? I keep forgetting he even exists. I mean, it's
I
just
think the Hawks have too. I think they've erased him from their memory. I
it's
don't
it's
think they want to remember the
solid,
contract they gave him or the fact that he's on this team.
right? I mean, I think it was
Uh,
his second season, and there were all-star flashes, like kind of like what we're seeing from Jalen Johnson. Like he was starting to make that rise offensively, and you're saying like maybe he can be the third option on a really good team.
People
And then
jump their
ever
skis,
since,
man. People jump their
yeah,
skis. They do this all the
mhm,
time with wings. As soon as a wing starts showing some promise and kind of establishes himself as kind of like a borderline starter level in his second or third year, people just jump at it like, oh my god, here's another all-star. Kuminga's having some of that right now too. It's like
yeah,
let's all just cool the brakes. You know, not every wing that scores a lot becomes a star. It takes a lot to become a star wing.
it does. It does. So I mean, for the Hawks, like that is just a really sad story, a really sad development. Because at the very least, you would want him to be a competent defensive player and a serviceable offensive player, if not above average offensive player, based on where you drafted him and based on what he showed you in year two. But between the knee injuries and his role fluctuating, he just hasn't been the same player. So for the
Yeah.
Hawks, that front court, you can't trust the front court. Like you said, the back court is kind of it is what it is between Trey and DeJounte, and we're probably going to see one of those two guys get traded. That's what all this signs point to. The center position is not stable, not having a
Capella's
Kongwu.
not in his
So
prime, man. He's just not.
yeah, yeah. Your
And
Capella's in foul trouble. I mean, you're really just you're hurting at that point, having to rely on Fernando.
Capella from 2017, the 2017-2018 like incredible Rocket season up until the Hawks Eastern Conference season. I think that prime Capella was much better defensively than he gets credit for. And the Hawks Eastern Conference Finals run, I know it gets kind of like torn down now, but they still beat a Sixers team that they were a heavy underdog for. And
Hmm.
part of the entire logic was provide some shooters and decent enough defenders around Trae Young at that time. Hunter was giving you a little bit more. At that time, John Collins was kind of giving you what Jalen Johnson kind of is now. So you
Yep.
had a little bit of that dynamic. You have Capella on the back end trying to block everything and doing the best job he possibly can against Embiid and other bigs. And then you have Trae Young just surrounded by this, being as heliocentric as possible. And he was canning threes that season. So
Yep.
just kind of built off of that formula. That was enough to kind of take you to the Eastern Conference Finals. And now they've just strayed so far from it.
Yeah.
Again, the DeJounte Murray thing, there's not real chemistry. Murray doesn't hit threes like that. He's not that type of shooter.
No.
His best play comes on ball, and Trae Young's best play comes on ball, and both of them I don't want off ball. And
Right.
defensively, asking DeJounte Murray to not like guard the best player every matchup is not what you want. It's just they've strayed so far from what brought them here. It's just not the right way to go, I think. I think Trae Young
No,
needs to find a new team. I think
for
that's probably
sure.
the best way to approach this. So,
For sure.
yeah.
But I think in the meantime, uh, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're in agreement that the Hawks, there is a pathway to victory here. They can
There
win
is.
this game. But if we had to give out a prediction today and really just say, hey,
I'm
this
picking
is
the
the
Bulls.
team that has the better odds to win based on
Yeah.
personnel and the numbers that we've kind of pointed out in the last few minutes. I think we're leaning Bulls in this matchup.
Yeah.
Home court advantage, just having Caruso. I think just having Caruso in general is just going to give us a
Yeah.
great chance
Hmm.
against Trae Young or DeJounte. Either or. He's probably going to spend time on both of those guys. DeJounte can go for 40. We've seen that when Trae Young was out. He can get hot himself. So being able to kind of stymie those guys, and you just don't have the support behind them,
And you
and
have
we'll see what
Javante Green
Bogdanovich can
now.
do.
Yeah.
Hmm. But yeah, it's just going to be it's going to be tough sledding for them. So I'm going with Bulls. Are you in agreement on that one on
Yep.
this matchup?
Totally in
Okay,
agreement.
cool. Well, that's that, and we'll see how that shakes out. But sad story for the Hawks. I mean, they're still just kind of trying to find their way after 2-3 years removed from the Eastern Conference Finals, and it just seems like they're kind of backsliding. And now they're going to have to retool again if they get rid of Trae Young. We'll see what happens with them, but it seems like they take one step forward, two steps back every season, unfortunately. So that matchup is going to be pretty solid. What I think will be an even better matchup is going to be the 7-8 play-in tournament game for the Eastern Conference. Sixers Heat. Man, okay, I'll save the Heat. I have some thoughts on that. Let's start with
Yeah,
the
please do.
Sixers. For the Sixers perspective, the elephant in the room. Embiid is back. Embiid is hooping. There was a scare the other night. There was a scare on Friday night to where I think he left the game momentarily. He had some kind of an injury, but he came back. It doesn't seem like it was
And
anything
he played
major.
well. I was
Yeah.
watching that. He came back. He was running in transition. Like if you had just tuned in then, you almost wouldn't have realized that he had gotten hurt and come back.
Mm,
So
that's good.
luckily that was pretty good.
That's good. So for the Sixers, they will be hosting the Heat. They have 47 wins on the season to the Heat's 46 wins on the season. And for the Sixers, they just played the Heat actually not too long ago. So just a few games ago, they beat the Heat by 4, 109-105. Maxey dropped 37. Embiid dropped 29.
Mhm.
Kelly Oubre chipped in 18. And Tobias Harris was DNP. So Tobias Harris did not play
Yeah.
in that game. Correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't heard anything about D'Anthony Melton coming back, so I assume he's out still. I don't think he's played in months, and I haven't seen any updates
No,
on
he
him.
came back. He came back a couple games ago. He
Okay.
played 15 minutes 2 games ago. Played 6 minutes last game. Didn't feel like his back was kind of in the right shape. I think he's missed the last one. Oh, I guess counting today too. So he's kind of missed the last 2 games.
Okay.
And he's probably going to miss the play-in, and they're not exactly sure when he'll be back, but it doesn't sound as bad as it did the first time when it seemed like there was no return timeline, and it was just great that he even came back in the first place. So
That's
it
good.
seems like
Yeah.
in a longer playoff run, he's something that maybe they can count on coming back. Just him and Covington has no return timeline, but
Yeah.
for the
That's
most part,
unfortunate.
this team is pretty healthy now, which is
I mean,
terrifying.
They just needed Embiid to get back healthy, and they're going to
Yeah.
have a great chance to win this
Oh, I
game.
have some stats on that.
Oh boy. So, giving out some overarching numbers here before I let you get into those stats. Embiid on the season. Now, he might have been the leading scorer in the NBA if he was eligible, if he'd played enough games. But since he's
Would have been
not,
my MVP.
was that MVP? Yeah, yeah. I was actually
He
thinking
would
that
be my
too.
MVP, man.
You're
He
going
was
to be right there
dominant.
again, man. No, for
He was
sure. He was
dominant.
absolutely
At
incredible.
January 23rd, he was by far undoubtedly my MVP. It was just a matter of games.
Yeah,
I feel comfortable saying it.
I think that's fair. He was in the driver's seat for sure.
Yep.
34 points a game on the season, 11 boards.
Oh,
Maxi chips in 25. So you got to think about this. You're almost getting 60 points a game from your top two players but per game, along with 11 boards and 6 assists. The 6 assists from Maxi. So just because you have those two guys in tandem that play really well with each other, play great off of each other, the odds I think are. I'm just going to say it up front. I think the Sixers, the odds are in the Sixers' favor on this one. You have the best player in the matchup. You have
yep.
arguably the best player in the entire Eastern Conference. You have one of the best players in the NBA who might have won the MVP if he had stayed healthy. And you got to think, and then you factor in Maxi's speed and dynamic style of play, which historically the Heat have struggled with. If you go and look at the players that have cooked the Heat in the past, one of the guys that's currently on the Heat roster, Terry Rozier, he would cook the Heat every time.
Oh my
Those
God.
type of
Yeah.
players, shifty, good end-to-end speed, pull-up shooting. I mean, they really do a number on the Heat. So you think about those traits that Maxey brings to the table in this matchup, going off those Embiid screens, being able to the main I think the main reason the Heat struggle with players like this. You think about the perimeter defenders. None of those guys are great perimeter defenders.
Mm-mm.
Jimmy Butler type of player. He's better as a roamer or an off-ball guy, being able to be
Especially now.
safety. Exactly, especially now that he's in his mid-30s.
Yeah.
Most of these guys, like, okay, Caleb Martin, uh, guys like that. I mean, Haywood Highsmith is probably their best perimeter defender. He'd actually do a pretty decent job out there. But aside from him, a lot of their perimeter defenders are not great laterally.
Yes.
Jaime Jaquez, that's one of
I do
his.
not want Jaime Jaquez on a speed guy. I think he
No,
muscles up.
not,
He does well in the post and he does well against size. If you're just trying to beat him that way, he's crafty and he's smart. But
he is.
if he's
But
going against speed, oh boy.
you can only do so much with those wits, with your intelligence level.
Yeah.
Physically, those defenders from Miami just don't match up very well with Maxi or Embiid for that matter. I mean,
Huh.
hey, Bam is a great defender, but there's no one on planet
Embiid
Earth
is different, man.
that can stop Embiid when he's going. There's no one that can slow him down. So I just see Embiid doing whatever he wants. He's going to be the constant. You can't do anything about that. I think Maxi's going to have a similar game to what he did in that last matchup against the Heat. Maybe not 37 points, but I think he will be efficient. I think he'll get almost any kind of look he wants, especially going to the rim. And another interesting component of this is the fact that a certain guard in the Sixers lineup is an ex-Heatle,
Yes.
Kyle
Yep.
Lowry.
Yep.
That's going to be
I was just
interesting.
gonna get to it. I'm waiting for the segue, man. I'm ready to
I
go.
can't wait, man. He's got an agenda here. He's going against his ex teammates. The Heat are going against their ex teammate. I mean, that's a great storyline. I love that part of this matchup. That's going to be fun to see. I don't, is now here's something else I wonder. Lowry spent a lot of time with the Heat. He spent 2+ years with the Heat organization.
Yeah.
He knows some things. So right now, they're sitting around a table having dinner. They're chit-chatting about the upcoming playing game. And Lowry's like, okay, let me give you the lowdown on Jimmy Butler. When he gets the ball, and this is just theorizing, this isn't anything legitimate. Jimmy Butler gets the ball 18 feet from the basket. You push up on him. The defender pushes up on him. Force him to his right hand. He's going to take 2 dribbles. And 9 times out of 10, he's going to go 2 dribbles right, spin left, and try to put his body into you and go up for a left-hand layup, draw a foul. Things like that. Those like little tendencies that maybe only he would know. Like, I think that could play a part here. Like,
See,
what
I'm
do you
not sure
think?
about that. I feel like when most people say that, they think that an ex teammate like that will probably help do a better job of helping guard the stars. I actually think it's differently. I think when you're going against stars, almost every team across the league, when they're going to play a star, because of the fact that you're so often, they are the number one player on the scouting report, right? They are the person who the team is wary of at all times. What makes them a star is the fact that consistently, despite you trying to take away their best stuff, and despite the opponents almost always knowing how to defend them, they're still able to score consistently. So I feel
Yeah,
like
yeah,
no matter what Lowry advice Lowry gives about Jimmy Butler, they've probably heard it. They know what his spots are. Everyone knows he loves doing those pump fakes and those step throughs, and yet he still manages to do it. So I'm not sure how
yeah,
much of a difference it'll make for him. Where it might make a difference is for someone like Tyler Hero. We're looking at someone, he's
yeah,
a little bit more of a finesse player, right? He's a skill player. A lot of it comes with his handle. He has spots he likes to get to. I think that's where it's going to make a big difference. And again, Lowry might be the one guarding Hero. So he might not even have to tell that many people about this information. He's just going
true.
to be able to apply it himself.
Yeah,
I mean, you said this was going to be a good matchup. I think Hawks Bulls will be a fun matchup, like watching kind of like a bad movie, but like it's an entertaining bad movie. I don't think this will be particularly good, honestly. I mean, they're just so injured. I doesn't seem like Duncan Robinson or Terry Rozier will be playing the matchup. I mean,
yeah.
it's just
Well, if Terry Rozier is
Kevin Love
out,
suffered the
I
left arm
think,
contusion today too. It's just they're
yeah,
so broken down and beat down. And now let me get to my Lowry stats. Okay, first let's play a game. I've asked you this before, but I want to see. Things have changed a little.
okay.
What do you think is the most devastating lineup in the league with more than 300 possessions played?
I would say Boston lineup would come to mind first. Um,
Good
then
guess, but
maybe a
no.
Sixers lineup somewhere in there. So-
Yep. It's the Sixers. It's the
okay.
Sixers. With Maxey, Melton, Batum, Tobias Harris, and Embiid in a starting lineup, right? This is from earlier in the season. With 467 possessions played, plus 33 per 100 possessions.
Wow.
Right? Well, wait. But, that's like, oh, okay, yeah, but that's with Melton, right? He's out. Yeah, it's fine. We'll be okay. I mean, what are they going to do? It's not like they can replace Melton, right? I mean, where are you going to get a guard who can, pass the ball well, is a good perimeter defender, low usage, can make threes? Where are you going to find that? Oh, shoot. Did we just give them Kyle Lowry? Oh, my God. What are we going to do? Right? And then you look at it. It's only 35 minutes worth of data, right? It's not much, right? We're
Yeah.
talking about not that many possessions, less than 100 possessions played.
Yep.
But Lowry, Maxey, Kelly Oubre, Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid is plus 40 per 100 possessions.
Wow. I wouldn't have thought that. That's surprising, actually.
That'll
With
do.
Lowry. With
I think
Lowry.
that'll do just fine. And it makes sense on paper because Oubre is kind of giving you that secondary, like not even secondary at that point. He's like, he's your fourth option. And I think he's pretty good as a fourth option scorer when you're
Mm-hmm.
just telling him, hey, just focus on your defense. Don't worry at all about passing. We know you can't really pass. That's never been part of your game. I think he's as a wing. I think that's probably what's held him back the most over the past couple of years. He just doesn't have that sort of vision, but that's okay. I just want you to score and focus on defense to kind of take some pressure off of Tobias Harrison and Embiid, and especially with Embiid back now, and he's not fully looking like himself. He's probably like 75% of himself. They're probably going to play a lot of drop.
Mm-hmm.
When Maxey goes against drop, he gives effort, but he's probably not a guy I want guarding a primary guard in a pick and roll screen game and when Embiid is in drop. But that's why you have Kyle Lowry, because I think Kyle Lowry is still excellent at that. And I think that's part of what makes that lineup tick as well as it does, is because you
Mm-hmm.
can kind of stick Lowry there as that defender. He's still pretty good defensively, even if offensively I don't want to depend on him. But that's okay when he's the fifth option in a lineup. So I mean, I just think this Sixers team with Tobias back, with that starting five healthy, I don't think Miami has much of a shot, if I'm being honest. Like I think this could be lopsided. I think the Sixers are
Yeah.
probably the second best team in the East to me. And you could make a case that if Embiid was 100%, I might even pick them out of the East. Like I really believe that strongly in this team.
That's fair. When I saw that matchup, and I had a chat with some other fellow Heat fans about this before this was even solidified, and I said, if we end up playing, Sixers, that's a bad deal. That's
Yeah.
a really bad matchup. And now that it's come to pass, we know it's going to happen. I generally agree. I mean, I think if Terry Rozier is in the fold, I would say that
Do you think it
okay.
will be
I'm not
for the
sure.
play-in?
I know he was out today, and
It doesn't seem like it will be for the play-in. That's kind of I'm basing some of my
okay.
assumptions off of him not being available, Duncan not being available, and Kevin
I know
Love being
Duncan
questionable
probably will
with the
be.
injury.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I mean, if that's going to be the case, then yeah, I would say they're just going to have to find their way into eighth in that second playing game
I
because
think they can do that.
yeah, I think they'll be fine. I think playing the Bulls again or playing the Hawks, though, I'd bet they get that spot. But as far as this game, it is going to be rough. If they don't have Duncan Robinson, that kills their spacing. Because you think about their other options, Jimmy Butler is actually shooting over 40% from three this season, which that's also pretty insane to think about. But he's not going to get a lot of respect from there. Bam
He's not going
actually
to
has
take
started.
he's not going to take enough shots with volume. If there's a
Yeah.
trend you can look at, actually, the past 4 years, I believe he has drastically upped his volume of 3-pointers taken in the postseason compared to the regular season. So he
Yeah.
actually does become a real threat there. But again, it's it's Jimmy, it's Bam, it's Hero, and we're starting to scrape the barrel a little bit for firepower against a team that's this dominant
Yeah.
and that can take
You,
away
you,
Tyler Hero and that
you
can
really
match up
are.
well against Bam. So it's
You really
really
are.
Jimmy or bust. I don't think that'll be enough at this point.
Nah, me either. I mean, Hero is playing well in his return. In the 5 games since he returned from a multi-week absence, he's averaging 25, 21, 5 boards and 4
Yeah,
assists. Pretty
he's been
solid
great.
numbers. Yeah, so I mean, Tyler can give you something that now will it happen against the Sixers, and I'm less sure about that. But for Jimmy, it has to start with Jimmy. It starts and ends with him. If he's aggressive and look at the last 5 games, 20 points a game, 5 boards, 6 assists, 1.4 steals,
That's not going to cut it.
47. No, not against the Sixers. So the numbers are good, and your numbers are, you would say, like you're somewhere in the All-Star territory with those
Yep.
numbers. You can't be an All-Star if you expect to make a deep playoff run and beat the best teams, and like you have to be that kind of Jimmy we saw last postseason, to where you were
The last
like
few years, most of his prime, honestly. I
yeah,
really do think this is the
years,
first post prime Jimmy Butler year we're getting. And
yeah.
that just means that he might just be an 8th seed who fizzle out in the first round, but they still made it there. So
They still made it, and all things considered, I mean, I would say that. I mean, I wish they should be a little bit higher in the standings. You look about some of the games that they lost. They lost
yeah,
against the Sixers by 4. They lost against the Pacers as well last week. They really needed that game. They lost against the Wizards on March 10th at
that
home.
one was just
That's
unacceptable.
absolutely unacceptable. That one win might have actually pushed them out of the play-in. You think about how close it is in the East.
Everything is close, man.
Every game matters. So they let some things get away. They had a meltdown against the Knicks. I want to say it was back just before Christmas, to where they had a solid lead, and I think in the second half they just melted down and let the Knicks catch them and win that game. So just things like that really cost them, and that's why they're here. If they'd played their cards, if they had won those games they should have won, maybe they're in the 6th spot. And it's totally different. You're not even in the plan. So then, for them, I think that would have been important because, like you said, they're run down, they're battered, they're bruised. They could have used this time, these several days leading up to start of the playoffs, to rest and recuperate. They won't have that, so that's really a huge blow for them. But I think all in all, I'm in agreement. I don't see them winning this game, uh, even with I guess before I knew that Rozier was probably unlikely to play. I was skeptical even before that, but with that in the mix, I just don't see it happening. So the Sixers, they're probably going to get out of this game. They're going to be the 7th seed, and uh, if they end
Poor
up
Knicks
playing the
fans.
Knicks, oh man, that's going to be a great series, and I picked them to win that
Is
one
it?
too with the Knicks.
I don't know how
With the
great of
Knicks,
series it's going to be if Embiid's healthy, man.
I don't see them sweeping or anything like that, but I
Oh no,
mean, I
probably not sweeping, but they are so Brunson reliant, and he must be so exhausted. I know even he'll have time off, but
they
even
probably
then,
all
man, it's a big ask.
it is.
It's
It is.
Again, he's all NBA caliber. He's been awesome. But even if he was like first team all NBA level, just the fact that they're so reliant almost solely on him, it's a little
It's gonna be
scary.
tough. That's gonna be tough.
It's a little scary. If Dante
But yeah,
DiVincenzo is your second best creator in a series, uh, he's been
not
great.
what
He's
you
been
want.
great, but
Yeah,
I don't know if that's the life I want to live.
not what you want. Not what
Yeah.
you want at all. So that was an easy one to kind of pick a winner on that one. Sixers over the Heat, and then the Heat are going to have to make their way in the second playing game after that one. So let's shift our focus over to the Western Conference and look at the 9-10 in the Western Conference. This is interesting because this is a first round matchup from last year, a 3-6 matchup. Now we're getting it as 9-10. And we talked about this before we jumped on the pod, Avi. These teams' win totals, it's not like they dropped way off from last year. You mentioned it before. The Warriors have more wins than last year, but they're in the 10th spot because this conference is so competitive, so deep, that 46 wins gets you a 9-10 plan matchup. That's how deep it is. And
It's
41
silly.
wins for the Houston Rockets gets you a nice trip to Cancun as the 11th seed, not being able to participate in the plan. So shout out to the Rockets though. They had a 19-win improvement over last season. That's really impressive. And they're on the
Phenomenal.
right track.
Phenomenal.
That is phenomenal. So
Fred
let's
Van
look at the
Vliet,
teams
man.
here.
Great job.
For sure. You got to give them a lot of credit. So for the Kings, they are the host of the 9-10 matchup. They have the 14th offense, 18th defense for the season. Now, that's a pretty big drop for their offense. They were leading the league last year. Now they're only league average. So some things have changed here. They lost 4 of the last 6 games of the regular season. That's how they ended up here. That was unfortunate. Here's their problem. Malik Monk is gone. Kevin Herter is gone.
Yeah, man. It's bad.
Now that is bad. We just talked about how Malik Monk, when we had Brett Usher on with us on the pod, we hyped up Malik Monk so much. The playmaking, the scoring, the steady hand off the bench, like all these things he brings to the team are no longer in the fold. That's the bad news. I want to shed a little bit of light and some good news on their backcourt because I've taken some time to watch a few of these Kings games, and they have a backcourt player that stepped into the role that Kevin Herter / Malik Monk were occupying.
Yep.
I want to give Keon Ellis some credit here
Me
because
too.
when you look at what
Love
he's
him.
done in this role, taking over for some very good players defensively, he's been awesome. I watched him
Yep.
have I can't remember what game it was. It was 2 or 3 games ago. I think he had 4 or 5 steals in that game, and he's a guy that can get some steals and blocks as a guard, as a
Mike Brown
6'4"
loves
guard.
him.
Who's that?
Coach Mike Brown loves him
Oh, for
because
sure. And you
last
see why.
1.5 years, he's just been looking for someone who can provide enough 3-point shooting to kind of stay on the court and be a complete dog defensively. Because if there's
Yes.
one complaint he's had over the last year and a half, if you listen to his press conferences and listen to him speak about what he wants from the team, to kind of try to protect Sabonis and Harrison Barnes at times, he wants really strong perimeter defensive play. Fox has improved, but he just carries too much of a
Never
load,
going to
and
be
that's not his
great.
game. He's never going to be a stopper.
Right.
And her and Monk, there were times when he was really looking at even someone like Chris Duarte or like Colby Jones, just anybody, please. I'll give you minutes if you play like this. I just
Please.
want someone, give me strong perimeter defense. I want one person to stick on a primary matchup, just anyone. So Keon Ellis is just a fantastic find for them. He's been one of the best players from that 2022 draft, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
You could make a case he's like, if we were doing like a redraft, I think he would probably be, for me, maybe even in like the lottery range. I mean, he's been superb.
He really has. He's knocking down his threes, like you said. So being a guy that's a catch and shoot, playing off the space created by Fox, Sabonis, guys like that, doing really well in that role. But the defense, I want to quantify the defense. I
Yeah,
went to
go for it.
Duncan Threes once again, and I looked at his estimated defensive plus minus. And he's not Caruso. He's not in that elite of the elite, but he is in the NBA 45th in that category. So if we're talking about 450, you're in the top 10%. That's pretty good.
Also, keep in mind that the way that system works, if you've actually like read through their criteria by Taylor Snar, I think his name is. Shout out to him for that metric. Um, they penalize minutes played a lot. So if you play very few minutes,
Uh,
they kind of set a
I figured.
baseline at being like a rotation level player, and you kind of have to
Yeah,
show that you can bump yourself all the way up. And so most of his production defensively has come in the last 2 months. So for him to
yeah,
even be top 45 despite such a
that's
small sample
crazy.
size in one season is
Yeah,
crazy. It shows you
yeah,
just how strong he's been defensively. If he had been playing starter or like high level backup minutes for most of the season, there's a chance we could have been looking at someone who's maybe top 20, maybe even someone
yeah,
who's some he might not get on an all defense ballot because there's so many good guards this year for all defense ballot, but he would be one of those like, hey, he got a vote. When you go back and look at the voting, you'd be like, oh yeah, he
yeah,
got a couple votes. Good
yeah.
for him. Great season.
I think we'll see that. And then I went to
Yeah.
another resource, and I don't have the full list. I just saw a tweet by B-Ball Index on
Yeah.
Twitter, and they narrowed it down. So isn't all defenders, but this is
Hmm.
only perimeter isolation um, defense as far as the metric,
Hmm.
and he is ninth in that statistic.
Yeah.
Perimeter isolation defense metric. Caruso is second. So using it as
Of
a
course.
barometer, we just talked about Caruso. He's second.
Of
Just
course.
7 spots down is Keon Ellis. So as far as the perimeter defender, and I wanted to focus on him first before even like Fox or Sabonis, because you're going against the Warriors, you got to deal with Curry. He's the
Yeah.
number one guy on the scouting report. So having Davion Mitchell and Keon Ellis able to just hound him and just chase him off the screens, off ball screens and on ball screens, I think that's going to really help them and give them a puncher's chance in this game. So I wanted to highlight him first just because he's been great and he's going to be a huge part of this game against the Warriors, playing against them. And now, of course, after that, you have to look at the big guys. You have to look at Sabonis. You got to look at Fox, what they're going to bring to the table. With Sabonis, this is a matchup that he could have a lot of success in. I went back to his numbers last season when he played the Warriors.
I
Um,
disagree.
okay, well, we'll get to that in a second. But 16, 11, and almost 5 assists last season against the Warriors. I know by a lot of what a lot of people were saying last year, he didn't play all that great. But just as far as like an on paper matchup, maybe he doesn't actually do that great. But on paper, just looking at the Warriors lineups, they have some of the smallest lineups in the NBA, and of course, having Draymond at center gives them a different, um, you know, can switch things up a little bit. I just think Sabonis has an opportunity here to have a great game. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he doesn't. But I
No, no,
think
no.
that
He
just
might not. He might not, but I disagree even on the concept that he might even have a good matchup.
okay.
Specifically, two reasons. One, I was going to get to this later, but since we brought up Sabonis now, he's kind of the elephant in the room, metaphorically speaking, not literally. It's not a pun, but he he is an amplifier, in my opinion, in the sense when he plays with other guards who are great scorers, he amplifies their game, and at the same time, because he plays with them, it amplifies his own game. And so I think, first of all, the loss of Malik Monk and Kevin Herter, who he had excellent chemistry with. I would argue on that team, the three best players he had chemistry with were Herter when he's healthy, Malik Monk, and Fox. And you could debate the order, honestly. I might even say Monk and him had the best chemistry of anyone on that team in terms of
Mhm.
handoff game, playing off of each other, the fact that Monk is so 3 point happy. So people would fly out to him in a way they don't even do for Fox necessarily because everyone knows Fox loves the mid range. So that means defenders are even more pulled out. Sabonis on the roll. It's a fantastic uh, pairing. And when you take that away from Sabonis and now you're replacing it with, okay, Keon Ellis, Keegan Murray. I don't, B-Ball Index had a tweet a couple weeks back as well about how great he was defensively. He's been phenomenal as well. So not to discount him in any way. Davion, we know what he is defensively. But offensively, Keon Ellis has some dribble game. Keegan Murray can shoot off ball, but that's a lot of valuable reps and touches as a ball handler that you are losing, and you don't have anyone really to replace it. So I think that's going to be a problem for Sabonis. And then I know the numbers look fine and all from last season, but Looney was giving him some real trouble in that playoff matchup because, again, most of Sabonis's game comes off of, all right, I'm gonna work my magic with Kevin Herter or Malik Monk or Fox, and then once you throw the ball down to me, I'm kind of going to exploit matchups against players who aren't maybe as physically strong as me, or I can drive it in sometimes, and you might have people who aren't as quick as I am, and that's just not the case at all with Draymond and with Trace Jackson Davis now in the fold. Even Looney looks better now that he's gotten a lot of rest. But that starting lineup with Draymond and Trace Jackson Davis, I think, is going to be hugely problematic because any one of them can function as the roamer, and at the same time, any one of them can also be kind of like the main matchup on Sabonis. Trace Jackson Davis kind of gives you that elevation in terms of shot blocking, and we know what Draymond is on Sabonis. They have a bit of rivalry, I'll say, but he's done a pretty good job on Sabonis most of the time. In some ways, actually, the way I think about Sabonis has evolved. I almost think about him in a way kind of similar offensively to the way I think about Draymond. Like, there's obvious differences. Sabonis, I trust that he will actually go for his own shot, whereas there's times when I feel like Draymond treats the hoop like there's a solar eclipse happening and he doesn't have his safety glasses on. Like, he just won't look at the hoop at all. He's like, oh, my eyes. He's just looking to pass it out, whereas Sabonis will actually be like, hey, if you're not on your game, I will drive and score like that. But I mean, I'll get to the stats later for the Warriors because I know this was off topic. I'll let you get back to it. These lineup and matchup stats, I don't think work out as well as they could have if the Kings were at full strength.
I get that. I think I was more just talking about, and and yeah, it's going to be tough for him to be the amplifier that he typically is, just because those guys are out of the lineup. Um, Looney to give him problems. I just wonder how much Looney is even going to play in this series. Like, I know
I
he's
don't think he
been,
has to. I
yeah,
don't think he has to. I think Trace has done a pretty good job of just stepping in and providing more of the same and actually providing me more as a shot blocker, which might be even more concerning for someone like Sabonis. Uh, Again,
maybe.
before I cut you off again, just wanted to make a quick point. Uh, he Sabonis is a center, right? And last season against the Golden State Warriors in the playoffs, we had a center have a 52% true shooting percentage in the playoffs against the Warriors, which is not great when you're looking at a center who's getting most of his shots near the rim. And he was averaging 5 turnovers per 100 possessions and more than 5 fouls. It was a really rough matchup, even if like the box score stats look like, hey, it's Sabonis just being productive. It was no bueno, man. They completely neutralized him.
Yeah, I mean the efficiency wasn't good. The efficiency definitely wasn't good. So yeah, I mean it's probably not the best matchup he's going to run into, but I still think he has a chance to be at least someone decent. And defensively is a different story. I think I was mainly focusing on offensively.
Oh
Defensively, yeah,
yeah,
he has his problems, and there's probably no really opponent that he matches up well against defensively. Um, but I mean, just defensive, I think just at least if he can just continue what he's been doing as far as being a rebounder, just extra opportunities for the Kings. Um, keeping the Warriors off the glass, at least by that metric, I think he could be solid. And I don't think they have the personnel to keep him off the boards necessarily.
I'm laughing because this series, in some ways, especially with the personnel they have right now, is almost kind of the opposite for me. I feel a little bit better defensively about Sabonis right now than I typically do. Because I think if you're playing drop with him, if you're playing hedge, you want strong perimeter defenders to be able to cover for him or give him time to be able to react or go back to his man or kind of have more protection and drop coverage. And so when you have Keon Ellis, Davion, and Keegan Murray getting so many of those minutes, I feel better about him defensively. And the fact that I don't trust Wiggins' 3-point shot anymore, and the fact that they have so many lineups these days where they're just throwing out 3 non-shooters, I think there's a lot of times when Sabonis is actually kind of protected. So in terms of how I would feel about Sabonis normally, I feel much worse about his offense and much better about his defense, which is not something I will normally say about Sabonis. But that kind of shows how wonky and weird this matchup is now compared to what it was even last season. Like,
It is.
you don't have those sort of offensive threats for the Kings, but your defense might be better. And the Warriors have more non-shooters in a lot of their lineups than they did last season when they had even someone like DiVincenzo providing some of that. So it's really funny how these teams have changed over the course of the year.
Well, when you lose somebody it's not just you lose a player and then you like there's someone else comes in for that player. There's a
Yeah,
replacement. So when you have a replacement, it changes the complexion of your team. You may actually get better in some aspects by losing somebody that was playing a lot of time for you. So that's what creates the wonky situations. But getting to the Warriors here just really briefly, they've been. It seems like as the season has gone on, they've had kind of a roller coaster, and they've had times to where it's like they might follow the plan. The Rockets were half a game behind just a couple of weeks ago.
yeah,
It didn't look great for them, but they finished the season 10-2 since that point. So since March 26th, 10 wins, 2 losses. Uh, they've figured some things out. I think offensively, they've started to right the boat a little bit. Kaminga being in that role and just not just for that stretch, but the entire season. Like Kaminga's emergence has been huge for them, giving them another legitimate wing threat, especially with Wiggins. Just you don't know from night to night what you're going to get from him, at least offensively. Just having Kaminga be able to come in and give you that transition monster and the guy that can just catch lobs and do things like that. Trace Jackson Davis doing the same thing, him catching lobs and being that vertical threat that they've kind of lacked in recent history is going to be huge for them. And I mean, I think the matchup in overall, yeah, the Warriors are going to be on the road and their season hasn't been anything to write home about. They've had their problems, but I mean, if Curry always has the capability to. He dropped 50 on him last year in Game 7. He has that
yep.
in his bag.
And he's
Clay
rested.
has looked, yep. Clay has looked pretty good. He's had a good stretch, I think, of maybe 15, 20 games, looking
Yeah,
like more of his old self. That's going to be huge help. Draymond is staying out of trouble. That's another plus for sure. He's back to
finally.
being that defensive quarterback that getting the good Draymond, essentially. Like we know what traits he brings to the table as good Draymond. Like if he stays away from the extracurriculars and he just stays true to himself, doing what he does best, like, hey, it's looking good for Golden State. So I think in the compromised state that the Kings are in right now, that actually might be more favorable, or the Warriors might have a better chance in this matchup just because of how they looked over the past 2 or 3 weeks. And the Kings have trailed off. They're trending in different directions, it seems like, going into this matchup. That's why I feel a little bit better about the Warriors and their chances of getting this game.
And I think so much of what makes the playoffs is it's not just about your depth, it's about with your main core, what are your best lineups and how good are those best lineups?
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I'll just tell you a lineup and tell you to guess what the per 100 possessions plus minus is on clean and glass. So we have the Warriors' new starting lineup of late has been Steph, Klay Thompson, Wiggins, Draymond Green, and Trace Jackson Davis. They've played about 150 possessions, give or take, a little bit more at this point, over the course of the year. What would you guess that their per 100 possessions point differential is?
Uh, maybe. Are you talking about efficiency differential or?
Just point differential, like cleaning the glass is like the point differential. So like, what is their point differential per 100 possessions? How much are they outscoring the other team typically per 100 possessions?
Uh, 12.
Nope. Try again. I'll give you one more guess. I'm not going to go
Okay.
too long.
I probably need to go higher, right?
Yeah.
20,
Nope. Plus 29.
29. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And that's just
Not
that's
bad.
their new starting lineup. And then they still have the old lineups that worked. The Steph, Clay, Wiggins, Kaminga, Green lineup is still plus 18 per 100. And then the Steph, Brandon Pajemski, Wiggins, Kaminga, Draymond lineup is also plus 12. So with that core 6 or 7 guys they have, their lineups are still really strong. And none of these lineups even include Chris Paul, who has some of his own decent lineups himself. So I think they have enough guys where if the Warriors don't mess around too much and don't let the Kings take advantage of them on the fast break and don't commit too many turnovers against these ball hawks that the Kings have.
Turnovers. Yep.
Yep, because that's really the Kings' best chance is if they just cause pure havoc and just get running on them in transition. Because
Yep.
otherwise, this team has been slumping of late, and the Warriors in their last 39 games are 27-12. On paper, this should not be close. It
Hmm.
really shouldn't, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, I don't know. I kind of feel like it won't be a runaway, but I mean, I definitely like the Warriors in this matchup just because of everything we mentioned. And I mean, the experience, the veteran, like there's something about just having a team that's been there before, been through the big moments. I think that's what gave them the edge last year. It was
Yeah.
close, but it just took the Warriors just enough above the Kings to grab that matchup. And I think it's a similar story this year. You have a team that's been together for so long; they've seen everything. It's hard to bet against them in a matchup like this. So that's why I think, yeah, the Warriors are going to take this one, and yeah, they'll have a chance to grab the eighth seed in that second game, where um, ends up losing the 7-8, which is what we're getting to here now. Talking about the Pelicans and the Lakers. And this game is interesting, Avi, because this is a rematch of today's game. So today's game did not go well for New Orleans, to put it nicely. Uh, New Orleans just never had a chance in this game. They never made it competitive. The Lakers led basically wire to wire. So starting on the Pelican side of things, they were actually really hot going into today's game. I think they won 4 straight, all on the road. So you look at the matchup before today, and you're like, oh, their things are clicking. CJ's been hot. Zion is playing like Zion. Like the pieces seem to be clicking. And then Zion comes in and scores 18 points on 4 of 13 shooting and just kind of lays an egg. The entire team lays an egg. So that's going to be a big question for the second game. Can Zion break through? He did have 30 points on 10 of 19 shooting when they played the Lakers on February 9th. So he's shown he's capable of having a good game against them. But I mean, then you go back to the in-season, you go back to the in-season tournament game where he had 13 points and they just completely melted down, and his defense was atrocious. And there's question marks. Like the Pelicans generally have not matched up well against the Lakers. Today
Ugh.
was the same story. Uh, Herb Jones was a highlight. He did hit 4 threes. He's shooting 41% for the season, which I didn't expect him to do that. That's been very
Fantastic by him.
impressive. Mhm.
Fantastic.
On paper, you look at what they have, and you're like, wow, they have Zion. They have Brandon Ingram, who is back from injury. They have wing defenders. They have shooters. They have a creator in CJ McCollum. They have a solid big man in Valanciunas. On paper, you look at it, and you're like, okay, cool, it looks good. But then you really think about how they match up against the Lakers, and you're like, okay, the Lakers are big, just standard by default starting lineup.
Yep.
Now that Hachimura is in the starting lineup, man, I mean, they're just every position, they have a lot of size.
Yeah.
So no one's shorter than 6'5" in that lineup. And then all 3 of their front court players are 6'10" or 6'8", 6'9" and above. Just big guys that can just start to clog things up in the paint for Zion, make life hard on him. And that's what it caused a problem today. It caused problems for the entire lineup. And you look at Brandon Ingram and you're like, okay, he's back. They're going to get some firepower. He only played 23 minutes. Part of that was because it was a blowout. He did get hot. I think it was in the second quarter, right before halftime. He ended up scoring 13 on 6 of 9 shooting. So we'll see how he does in the second game. I think he's going to play more minutes for sure. And if he plays like he did today, that's really going to help them out. They're going to need that punch. But I mean, their problem today wasn't necessarily the offensive production. They were getting some good looks. It was the defense that just had no shot. LeBron picked them apart
Huh.
from start to finish.
Oh
They
my
tried
god.
man. Obviously, that didn't work. They switched to a zone, a 2-3 zone, and Hachimura just roamed the baseline. And as soon as LeBron got into the restricted area or inside the arc, drew a second defender, boom, dump pass. Hachimura was
Mm.
cutting, got a dunk, hit AD for lobs, hit 3-point shooters. D'Lo stayed hot. D'Lo had a great game. So, I mean, yeah, for the Pelicans, I don't know. Like if Zion can't get going against this team, I just don't think there's enough on the table. Like, yeah, Herb Jones has been great, and Trey and CJ, but like your main guy, Zion, has to be the main guy. Like he has to play like all NBA Zion. And against this team, I just don't see it happening. AD manning the paint,
Hmm.
that's going to be a huge problem. So I think they'll be able to. I think they'll be able to get enough points on the board, but as far as just being able to slow Lakers down, for Zion to get into his rhythm. I mean, another problem is Valanciunas only played 7 minutes today. He played like 7 minutes and 20 something seconds. The
Yep.
rest of the game, Larry Nance was essentially playing the five for them. And that creates problems when AD is on the floor for the Lakers.
Yeah.
Like, this. Larry Nance is not a shot blocker. He's not a particularly strong defender in general.
He's actually
So
all right. I think he's
he's
actually all
okay.
right in terms of like a switchable five thing. But I mean, he is him playing at this stage of his career. I think is more of a reflection of the fact that they just don't like the Jonas and Zion fit at all
Yeah.
offensively and defensively.
It,
Honestly,
it's not working offensively. It's yeah, it's kind of like they had to do it.
it's
Just
not a ringing endorsement. Really, it's not like they're
right,
like, oh yeah, we're excited about this Larry Nance thing. They're
right.
like, well, I guess we'll try Larry Nance.
We'll just see how it goes, and then it just creates problems because you're not able to get enough rebounds. I don't think against the Lakers. Like AD has a field day. You're getting lobs everywhere. You're getting beat. It's just I think it creates a cascade effect in other areas when you switch out Nance for Valanciunas. So that's a problem. If Valanciunas can't play, gets played off the floor because of the fit concerns with Zion,
Yeah,
that's a whole other thing. They had a crap ton of turnovers today. I think they had 20. I, I wish I had the number in front of me, but I want to say 24, 25
19.
turnovers.
I have it. I have it. 19.
Oh, 19. Okay. It felt like they
Yeah.
had more. I thought I saw more somewhere. But crap ton of turnovers. Lakers got a lot of looks in transition. It's just, yeah, all around just a really rough game for the New Orleans Pelicans. And I mean, I don't know. Unless AD doesn't play, man, I don't know. In that playing game, I don't like what I saw from them. I don't like how they match up with the Lakers.
It's all
LeBron
bad,
figured them
man.
out. So I would bet on the Lakers being that hot again as far as shooting, but even with that, um, I wouldn't expect.
Pelicans were kind of hot too, though. That's the concerning thing.
Actually, they did show good. I think they shot a better percentage overall from three. Actually, like
They
overall as
did.
a team, they shot a
They
better
did.
percentage. So, yeah, that's not a good sign. And you still pretty much had no chance in this game of winning. So, not a good sign.
I'm just waiting to say this. We're talking so much about the Pelicans being dependent on paint scoring, right, to be able to keep up offensively with the Lakers, right? Buckle up. They got outscored 68-42 in the paint in today's
Wow,
matchup by
wow,
26
jeez,
against a team that you could argue actually is specializes in shooting now because of the lineups they're putting out there with Rui and Russell and Reeves and LeBron just becoming a flamethrower this year, which is awesome. I love how he's evolved in his career and now he's just like a 41% three-point shooter
yep,
because that was the last thing he had left to conquer in this game. So
right,
why not? You know,
why
it
not?
was it was like the last badge he was missing.
Yep,
That was his last 2K badge. He's like sniper. All right, let me go get that. You know, but
love it.
it's just crazy. They this I'm glad you're talking about all the stuff that they tried defensively because, as we talked about before, I was watching Suns Timberwolves much more and only kind of catching bits and pieces of this while you were watching this match. So I actually want to ask you this too, offensively, just as a discussion point.
Yeah.
As they were kind of, because I saw at the beginning when they were putting LeBron on Zion a couple of times and they were struggling offensively, I think, to generate good looks. What did they end up like switching to with Ingram back today?
As far as
Like just like
what do you mean?
how they were orchestrating their offense, who they were trying to provide open looks for. Did they kind of like shift away from Zion and like towards Ingram and other CJ, or what did they try?
It was definitely Ingram in the second quarter. I want to say he scored like three or four times there, like in the last few minutes of the second quarter. So he
No,
definitely
okay.
got hot. He was hitting his signature, mid-range pull-ups. That was definitely a highlight. But I mean, not just today, but in recent games, they've really been leaning on CJ to really bail them
Yeah,
out. And his three-point shooting has been extremely hot recently. And I mean, really, even from inside the arc, he's been efficient. So CJ has been, I think, the primary kind of like the secondary option as far as just
mm,
creating a good shot and getting some points on the board, other than BI. Now that BI is back, he's another release valve. But later in the game, um, it definitely seemed like they were trying to get some things going with CJ, Herb Jones, spot up, Trey
Mhm.
Murphy, maybe a couple of dribbles. I mean, he's still not like doing anything crazy. I mean, he's hitting some deep threes for sure, maybe off of a dribble or two. But on ball, yeah, CJ has been the second guy. I'm curious in game two if they actually they'll probably start to um, funnel some of those touches back to Ingram now that Ingram
Yeah.
has a game under his belt. But today it seemed like CJ was the second option if Zion wasn't going.
And second question, how did BI look to you defensively?
Um, I wasn't really keen on him defensively, but
Okay.
I would say he was probably. I think he was okay as far as what I can see. Like he wasn't a
Okay.
liability necessarily, but yeah, I mean, no one was getting any stops on the Lakers pretty much the entire game. I mean, they were getting good quality looks from inside and outside, all over the floor. So can't really like get on him too much. The entire team was just getting cooked essentially. So
Yeah, that's what it looked like from the highlights. Because again, highlights and the bits and clips I watched, it really did look like the biggest problem that they face is the fact that Zion can't cover LeBron, and they don't have any like body matchup who can cover LeBron
no,
really well.
no,
So you just completely depend on him as a screen and roller. And then again, Nance, decent defender, not the guy I want guarding Anthony Davis. It's
no.
not ideal. So you're just kind of letting their two best players cook. And then defensively again, you have Jose Alvarado, which is great, but you're probably not going to use him as a starter, right? So now you're still dependent on maybe some screen navigation from BI and CJ. Depending on who Herb Jones is covering, you just go funnel it to the other guy. So go, Herb's on Reeves. All right, great. D'Lo, you cook. Oh, he's on D'Lo now. All right, Reeves, your time in the spotlight. You know, they just don't have the manpower. And a couple more matchup stats because again, I was talking so much about like how lineups might dictate how these playing games look. Again, a lot of this is one game sample size variance.
Yep.
Pelicans have some great 3-point shooters. They can win almost any match if they just start hitting their threes all of a sudden. They shoot 55% from three. Congratulations, you're the 7th seed. You know, anything can
Yeah.
happen.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of lineups, the D'Angelo Russell, Reeves, Rui, LeBron, and Anthony Davis lineup has played almost like played more than 800 possessions, and they're about like +5, +6. It's not world beaters. If for your starting lineup, you typically want more like a +10 sort of thing, but
Mm-hmm.
it's all right. It's pretty decent. The Pelicans' three main lineups are all basically net neutral. Like any of their lineups with CJ Ingram, Herb Zion, Jonas. If you put Trey Murphy in for Brandon Ingram because he was hurt, it's still net neutral. You put Larry Nance in for Jonas, it's still net neutral. Like they don't have any like killer starting lineups. Most of their damage has been done by the fact that in the regular season, if you go look at their bench lineups, they're all like +20, +21, +30, +29 in those smaller samples because they have such depth with Jose Alvarado and Najee Marshall and so many of these other. Dyson Daniels has been great. He's masquerading as a five half the time. So they have all of these depth pieces where they can just completely crush you. But their starting lineup doesn't have that synergy because there are so many weak points defensively. They don't have any consistent rim protection. I know Zion's improved over the last 20 games or so, but it's
Yeah.
not the same thing as having a true rim protector, right? The
Right.
way I was talking about Trace Jackson Davis, the way I'm talking about Anthony Davis, they don't have that sort of rim protector. So it just seems like, especially if the Warriors get through two, I know that they beat them recently um, on the Warriors' home floor as well by 5 points. But Kaminga wasn't there, Gary Payton wasn't there, and it seems like he should be back too. I know they didn't have Ingram either, but again, part of the issue is Ingram is coming back. That's why I wanted to know what he looked like defensively. Because if
Okay.
he's not himself defensively and he's working back conditioning wise offensively, the synergy problems you already had in terms of CJ Zion and Ingram, sometimes you're watching them play, there is that feeling of my turn, my turn, my turn, my turn. It doesn't look like they're always getting super creative outside of using CJ or Trey Murphy sometimes. Like it feels like their
Mhm.
offense sometimes does get really stagnant and boils down into Zion, go try something with a floor that's not very well spaced. I think there's the Lakers matchup. I just know it just seems I feel very confident that it's a bad matchup for them. And I
It
think
is.
in a play in one game setting, there's a chance that the Warriors matchup isn't that great for them either, especially because the Warriors have been better on the road this year, and the Pelicans have been worse at home. So
Yeah,
it's just
that's true.
it's possible that they could have an excellent season where they win a crazy amount of games and they still miss the playoffs, which
That's crazy to think about.
it's just
Right.
49 wins and you miss the playoffs. Man,
That would be wild. But I mean, like the playoffs, it comes down to matchups a lot of the time. Like
yeah.
matchups are key. So um, yeah, on the Lakers side here to kind of wrap things up
Mhm.
in the pod. Yeah, I mean the Lakers were dominant. I mean LeBron had 6 assists in the first 6 minutes of the game. He finished with was it 17? I think it's
Mhm.
17 assists. So, I mean, he was dissecting the Pelicans. They were getting whatever they wanted. Um, D'Lo had 24 and 5 threes. The Lakers, the key for the Lakers is like they've really kind of figured something out as far as offensively.
Yeah.
And they inserted Hachimura on February 3rd.
Mhm.
The Lakers, that was their turning point. And he's really helped juice their offense. I went to a Twitter account that I follow, Straven MBA, and he did
Nice.
some rating breakdowns from basically the third through the thirds of the season.
Yeah.
So the first, third, second, and third. And for the Lakers, I mean, they were 23rd in offense in the first third.
Mhm.
So through Christmas through All Star break, they were 12th, and then since the All Star break, they are fourth. So
Yeah.
you just see the progression of like you put in Hachimura and D'Lo gets his rhythm, and LeBron and AD are just they continue to just chug along. But the difference is those connector pieces have really kind of come into their own, and they've found their role in offense, and they're providing a solid impact. Hachimura is shooting over 40% since they made that move on February 3rd to insert him as a starter. So
He does what he
Hachimura is
does.
facing, yeah, I mean, that's what you need to like. If LeBron has a team that has the proper spacing, you can do anything. Like, there's no limit to what you can do as an offensive team. So I think the only question mark in this game, upcoming game for the Lakers, hey, is AD 100%? Is he playing? Is he
Yeah.
100%? If he is, I'd take the Lakers every time. If he's not for some reason, if he's playing and he's not moving the way he usually does, he's a step slow to getting to the ball or getting rebounds or whatever, like it becomes a discussion. It becomes a real discussion. But with
Agreed.
everything that the Lakers have been doing offensively and LeBron is LeBron. Even after 21 years, he can still just dissect every single defense.
Do not take him
And
for granted,
including,
people. I mean, he
yeah,
is phenomenal. What he's doing at this age, and the fact that when you watch him, he's added so much to his game in terms of his outside shooting that there are times when you watch him and you don't even feel like he's post prime when he's
yeah.
almost 40. Is he
He's
almost
still
40 or
just
is he
like
40? Is he actually
he's
40 now?
39.
Dang.
He's gonna be 40 this year
Okay,
in
yeah.
December.
See, that's just crazy. I
So
mean,
and he flies down the court. He's in transition. It's like this looks like
yes.
he looks
He looks
one
great.
step slower than his absolute prime. What you
He
think
looks
about that
much
at his
better than he
age
did last
makes
season.
no sense. Like he's slower, but
Yeah.
still, if he's in transition, he's still one of the deadliest players one on one in transition that you can deal with. So he's going downhill. I mean, he exploited one on ones today, going to the rim against Zion and everybody. And then as soon as they send another defender, hey, that's where I start doing this. Like there's no good coverage for him. So a lot of times, whoever wins the series, it comes down to the best player. We say
Mhm.
that a lot. Which team has the best player in this matchup? Lakers got two of them. They got two
Yep.
NBA guys. So I mean,
Totally
hey,
agree.
that's I think that's a good enough reason to just ride with them, even if they're not at home, even if the Pelicans have a lot of depth. They just like you said, like their starters, their primary contributors, I don't think match up well enough to be able to
Yeah.
cover the gap.
Two last points because I feel like we're gonna close soon. Um, in their last 36 games, the Lakers are 24 and 12. Like the way I talked the Warriors being 27 and 12 in their last 39, Lakers have also been on a complete tear. And again, most of that is like you said, once they settled into that Rui starting lineup and D'Lo kind of found his rhythm, as you said. So that's great. And second, uh, I know the Warriors have been 3-1 against the Lakers this year. I still feel like if somehow the Lakers were to lose to the Pelicans, that matchup would still be a little bit concerning just because of how much more reliable the Lakers are in terms of paint scoring. The Warriors have been pretty good, but I feel like if I was depending on it, I would probably count on the Lakers a little bit more. And then the Lakers are capable of hot shooting with LeBron, Rui, Torian Prince can shoot all right. Rui, did I say Reeves? Reeves. So they have those shooters. So I know they've been 3-1 against them, but I'm not sure that matchup is that great for them. Um, One last point for the Pelicans. I know it sounds like I'm really down on the Pelicans. There is a key to Pelicans victory. It's just a little bit. It's not something you want to bank on. So even in the most recent matchup, without Kuminga being there, right? And Kuminga is probably the best source of paint points for the Warriors. The Warriors still outscored the Pelicans 50-40 in terms of paint points, right? But the reason the Pelicans were able to win is they shot 50% from three.
Mm, that'll do
When
it.
you're going to shoot
That'll
that
do it.
hot, if you're going to be that white hot, you can beat anybody.
Yep,
So,
for sure.
and they have the shooters to make it happen. So I'm not going to completely discount them. They've been a great regular season team. You don't get to almost 50 wins without being this phenomenal.
Yep.
It's just if you were asking me probability wise, what would I bank on consistently? I think I would bank on the fact that hey, these teams are probably better than you within the paint, and that's what's supposed to be your strength. And in terms of high end shooters, the Warriors probably have better high end shooters, and the Lakers have more diversity in terms of high end shooting.
Hmm.
So that's probably why, if you made me pick, I think I might pick the Lakers and Warriors over the Pelicans and the Kings.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you for sure. So, I mean, these matchups are all going to be super interesting for their own reasons. And then when we get to the secondary matchups, so we get those whoever loses the 7-8 plays the winner of 9-10. Those are going to be really interesting as well. So I cannot
Yeah.
wait to see how that kind of breaks out. And then we're going to jump onto another pod. Hopefully, we can do that right before we start round one, and then we're going to
Yeah.
look at who made it in, and talk about the round ones.
These
Uh,
matchups are tasty, man. Tasty matchups we got.
be great. I can't wait, man. But for this conversation, I think we're reaching the end. So, Avi, always a great time. Thanks for jumping on. Some really insightful conversations here. It's going to be fun to just continue to ride out with you the rest of the season. So, thanks for coming on. Uh, Everybody that's joined us and stuck around, thanks for listening to this pod. We appreciate you.
Our best episode yet, I'd say.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would say so too. So we're hoping that all you guys continue to ride with us as we go into the postseason and even after the season. We're gonna have some content coming for you guys.
Mhm.
So check out all of our content at notradeclause.com, no trade underscore clause, no trade clause on Instagram, and no trade underscore clause on Twitter/X. Well, a lot more on the way. Don't miss it over there. So thanks everybody again for tuning in to this podcast. We hope to see you on episode 110 coming up real soon as we get into the formal playoff matchups here for the NBA. So thanks again, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Take care.